Yeah, this is like how many we've done CTO summits? You've put on 4? Wow, so that's a lot. They're very exciting. It's my favorite, definitely my favorite conference in Melbourne. So it's good to be here to kick off the first one in Brisbane. I used to live in Queensland, so when I got off the plane this morning and felt that air as I left the plane, reminded me of when I lived here and how much fun it is. All right, are there any CTOs in the house? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I'll tone down my bullshit a little bit. Does anyone here want to be a CTO? It's about even. Does anyone here not want to be a CTO? All right, all right. So we're about even. So I think actually there'll be a little bit in here for everybody. So just quickly, I started my career, like it's weird to convert your whole career into 4 icons. How embarrassing to be able to do that, right? My first one, I was at university in Melbourne for 10 years. I was doing a PhD in AI, and I never got the PhD because I went to deliver some papers in a place I'd only heard as folklore called Silicon Valley. And then I ended up living there for 5 years, and when I left, my boss said, "Oh, you can go, but you can't leave." So I commuted from here to San Francisco for another 8 years almost, before I was living in Melbourne and here. So that commute, you think, oh man, it took me 20 minutes to get to the city. Mine was 21 hours door to door to get to work. That sucks. Then I worked at MYOB. I was employed there as the CTO for about 7 or so years. And since then, I've now started the last year and a half, been doing my own startup called The Big Crunch. So let's first define what a CTO is and the different kinds of names for the technical leader. CTO means technical leader, all right? In America, there's a very clear delineation between the types of technical leaders there are. In Australia, we screw it up and it's all mixed and matched and we haven't really sorted it out yet. So let's define what they all do and mean, and then you can work out for your company or for however it is, how it goes. So the CIOs, they keep the lights on. Right? When a new employee arrives, they give them a laptop. That's the kind of stuff. And I'm putting them in a really rude pigeonhole there. The VP of Engineerings, they are given money by the CEO to build software. So they're the operational people. They hire, they fire, and they must deliver software to achieve something within a certain budget, right? So that's a pretty important role. And then the CTO is more about strategic, technical direction of the company, the public-facing person of the company. All right, now, often you get these 2 in 1. At car sales, it's switched around. Sometimes, you only have a CIO who does everything, so it's all a bit weird. But roughly, those are the 3 kinds of things. Now, where can you do this kind of job? Well, I think there's only 3 places you can do them. In an enterprise, that's where you sell something, but it's not technology, right? So you might be a car auction house. You need technology to run it, right? So you have a CIO potentially there who can run the technology. Or a bank. Anyone here work in an enterprise? Not very many. Interesting. All right. Next is consulting. This is where you do somebody else's work, right? You dream up great ideas and build awesome solutions and give huge amounts of value to other people, and your boss takes half the billing rate that you bill out at. Does anyone here is a consultant? Sure, it's everyone. All right. And the last one is the product, where what you build is what you sell at your company, right? Much fewer of these around, especially in Australia. In Silicon Valley, dime a dozen. Anyone here in a product company? Wow. That is the biggest category. That I've not seen before in Australia. It's rare. So that's pretty exciting. So I'm going to be focusing mostly on the product category for this one. And so my insults to the CIOs and the VPs are well-founded. So if you're in a small company and you are the CTO, this is a simple way to do it, right? You do everything. You design the architecture, you code it, and when a new employee comes, you give them a laptop, right? Beautiful model. You get all the glory. Glory. I'm the man. By the way, when I say man or I say guys, I mean both genders. Okay, I struggle to switch back and forth between them, and it sounds weird, so I'll just pick a couple and I'll say it, but I mean both genders. But I reckon it's actually the hard work model, right? This is actually you're doing freaking everything, and that's really annoying. But when the company grows up and you're in a bigger place right now you've got the bosses, now you've got the executives who are running the company, right? Where does the CTO sit here? I've got it in the middle. Which is the CTO's home team? That's a question. Wasn't rhetorical. Sorry? Executives? We're not executives. Those are the wankers.
You've got to have a foot in each camp.
Foot in each camp. Yeah. Let's be very, very clear. The CTO is first and foremost incorrect. A, executive. I was just waiting for someone to get it wrong so I could point at them and say wrong. Thank you, Michelle.
Wishful thinking.
You're welcome.
You have to be first and foremost, you're an executive. Now, you have to walk here a very fine line, all right? If you're an executive and you act like one, then engineering won't trust you. But if you, vice versa, the same thing, right? The bosses are always wanting to know what's happening in engineering. And the VP of engineering is on the hook for all the delivery. I've given you money, now give me some code. You know, they want to know, are you late on your delivery? What's going on? But if you're too much an executive and you're their mole, they won't tell you. All right, so this is actually a really tricky situation. But obviously there's more than just this. Oh. And I got him in quotes. Does the business actually exist? Do they exist? Oh, you're scared to answer my questions. You're all in product company. Okay, so I cut down Michelle. I wasn't that cruel. That was an easy cut down.
How about yes? Yes.
Great.
Yes, it does, but you're all the bloody business.
You're all the bloody business, yeah. How often you're in engineering go, well, the business want this, and it's this proverbial business. They are real. Who are they in the business? They are, unfortunately, the salespeople. They are. Because you can engineer as much as you want, but unless someone can get it into the hands of somebody else when you're at a product company, right? So the business, they have to sell, they've got to talk to a customer face to face and say, you're going to want to buy the software because it does X, Y, Z, and it's really good and give me some money for it. That's a hard thing to say to a customer. And so the business are a certain type of person who can do that. And as a CTO, you need to understand that fully and you need to be a part of that. You need to understand what's the messaging and how they're delivering it and what the customer, who's closest to the customer here? Who's closer to the customer? The salespeople or the product team? Who is or who should be, right? They're all pretty close, right? I mean, the business understands really well what the customers want because they've got to look them in the eye and try to sell them something. That's when the rubber hits the road. The product team, they think they know. Well, we've interviewed the customer and they want X, Y, Z, right? The CTO really has to be, you know, the go-between because the business want to know, salespeople want to know what's happening in engineering, what they'll be selling next, right? And it's hard for them to go every day to the VP of engineering who's delivering software or the developers and go, how's it going? You're late, whatever, you know what I mean? So they're going to come to the CTO to try to get that information. But the CTO and the product team also have to be absolute blood brothers because they're dreaming up new things to give them and they want to know the dreams they're having, is there any reality in these dreams? Which ones are possible? They could have 10 ideas, they pick the first 2 because they thought they're the best, where in fact the 10th one is the best one because one line of code change and we've got it. You know what I mean? But they wouldn't know that. All right? So as a CTO, you've got to fill that gap. You're the go-between between all these. And I crossed the lovely go-between bridge on the way here, which is nice. There is also this ugly thing that ruins all good product development. It's called the client. And this thing here, we are accused in our industry, in the software industry, of failure to deliver software. 60% of all projects fail, blah, blah, blah. I think it's that gap. Raise your hand if you spoke to a customer in the last week. It's pretty good. About a third. Not bad. Should be everyone, right? You have to have absolute dead cold context of what is happening with your customers in order to, and my very first mentor in Silicon Valley, the first guy who employed me, said to me, Simon, if you want to build a good product, know your customer. Great freaking advice. Okay. Now, the executive, we thought they were all the bosses, they were the cool kids, they're not. They're just the biatch of the board, right? The board actually rules the roost here. And so, now, what's happening is, the executive tell the board, oh yeah, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And the board says, yes, no, okay, go for it, try this, blah, blah, blah. But then the board really want to know what's going on. All right, and so I've been involved in a number of board meetings. Didn't get invited to all of them because there's a small overlap here. And out of 10 executives at MYOB, only 2 were actually on the board. And so they had their board, the executive meetings once a month, and then the board meetings once a quarter or whatever. And some of us got invited at various times to address the board. But the board want to know what's really going on. So if you're having a party and the board are there, they're going to come to you and go, so what's happening in engineering? And what you shouldn't do is, oh, yeah, mate, shit, that delivery is way off. Oh, I got that security hole. You heard about that one, that major security breach. Oh, yeah, right? No. When the board comes to you and asks you how's it going, you know what you say? You do what your teenage children do. Good. Yeah, good. You have to toe the party line, right? As an executive, there's a whole situation going on over there, right? Massive mess. You have an interpretation of what's happening in your company, and that's the interpretation that you've got to talk to your board about, right? You've agreed about it. If you're going to change the interpretation, that's fine. Just make sure your CEO knows it and you've all agreed, right? To go rogue and to tell them a different story than your CEO thinks you're telling them is not cool, right? And it's not about lying and it's not about the truth, right? It's just about what's our agreed interpretation, because everything has an interpretation, right? You might think we're late on the delivery, and I might think we're not late on delivery, right? So where are we actually at, right? Well, we agreed to where we're at, and that's what we tell people, right? So really important at that kind of level to be talking that way. There are some more people here, and CTO plays a huge role in this. Vendors. I've got them as a small little thing. Everyone hates vendors, right? When you're in a product company, they're freaking annoying. They charge you, they ring you up all the time, and they want to sell you more. But vendors are the key to make it or break it in a product company, right? Because you can either build it yourself or you can buy a product to fill the gap. And if you buy the product, it's kind of nice. And if you buy the product and you agree to buy it for 2 years and at a certain amount, they'll write you a contract. And now you can be saving lots of money. You can get your product at 0.0002 cents per user interaction view or something, right? But they add up. How much does those freaking Amazon bills add up, right? Amazon, no, it's fractions of cents. But why are my bills hundreds of thousands of dollars then, right? Because that stuff just adds up, all right? And this can get you in a lot of trouble because if you pick a line, if you pick a number that doesn't work out, your company will go under, right? Or you have to try to get out of the contract. And you say, well, our developers, they're cool. They build with a facade. So we never touch the vendor code. We build a facade. And if we want to, we can just switch it out anytime we want. No, you can't. You cannot switch out, right? Once you've got a little bit of vendor code, even your facade there, your facade doesn't last very long, right? Because as soon as you've got to handle error cases and all sorts of different things, suddenly this facade is creeping in and it's got its little tentacles on every line of your code for every single error code that could ever happen, right? And then if you want to change vendors, guess what? All the error codes are different, all the error situations are different, and you'll never pull them out. So be very careful here, and as CTO, make sure that the people in your organization who are trying to buy products are picking the good ones. What's the gap here? Top right? What's the CTO else? What else does the CTO do? Public-facing side of the business. If you're a product company, all the world wants to know what you're doing, right? So you've got to go to media training, you've got to go on TV and radio. It's a part of the marketing of your role. A big part of your role, especially in a larger company as CTO, is marketing, right? And that means dealing with the press. That's really nerve-wracking for a computer person, right? Having to talk to journalists because they're trying to trip you up, they're trying to hear things that you weren't meant to say. You've got to toe the party line. It takes a while to get really good at not screwing that up. All right. Strategically, this is how I worked in my role as CTO at MYOB. I had my strategy house, and most of the executives had a house. And within each of these boxes, I had like 10 bullet points. And every quarter, I would choose a few of them to work on. So I would talk to the CEO, we'd talk about what is important for the company right now, which ones of these pillars should we be working on. Some of them, were cross-cutting, and I always had to choose a little bit from them. Some of them a bit more strategic, but roughly this was it. And every month I would meet, I would chair the security and the risk meeting to make sure that, when you're a big company, protecting your revenue is really important. You've got revenue, and if you screw up big time, and you have some massive security breach, then your customers go, oh, we don't want to use them, and they'll leave, right? So that could be a massive hole. So there's risk, and then there's innovation, and there's all these different things to balance. And a CTO, you've got a particular insight into the technology and the risk, which very few other people have at the organization, have got that holistic view. So this is really important for you. I also had meta-level initiatives. So I was trying to install Agile and build a data platform, move us to microservices, take a platform approach, all these kinds of things. And I remember once the CEO came to me and said, like 3 years after I was there, goes, "Oh, Simon, I'm giving you an executive award for delivery." I go, "What? What for?" He goes, "Oh, Agile. I think we're Agile now," right? He asked me 3 years ago, right? And of course, we're only in the middle of a journey. You know, Agile takes more than 3 years, but you know, at that point, he turned around, and so all my meta initiatives, the CEO was judging me on 2 or 3 year timeframes to get these things done, which is kind of interesting, right? So if you're working day to day on an Agile wall with a card, you're not going to see the meta level things, right? That's good. Actually, we'll talk about that again in a second. So what I reckon is, but the ticks are how far I think I got on each one of these initiatives in 7 years. But here's what I think you need. You need to be deeply technical, right? Business savvy and inspiring leader. Because remember, all the engineers are reporting mostly to the VP of engineering. So you don't have necessarily any reports, or only have a few reports if you're the CTO. So how do you get stuff done, right? You get stuff done by doing this stuff, which gives you influence. It's in a traditional pure sense, and when we talked about there's different ways you can configure the CTO role, it's very much an influence-based position, right? You can't really tell anyone what to do. You've got to inspire change using all those skills. Okay, so let me switch now. So that's me in a big company CTO. But I've also worked in many small companies as chief architect and CTO, etc. So let's talk about what it means at a very small company. Who's here at a very small company? Okay, so we're about third as well. That's good. Okay, so the most important thing when you're at a small company is this. Your runway. So my company, we just went through, my startup went through StartMate, which is the Blackbird startup incubator. And this is what we talk about all the time. In fact, the actual expression is, it's a little bit morbid, I agree, but it's what you talk about normally. And I was, I was nervous talking about this. Originally, nervous laughter. Some of you gave that as well. But yeah, you got to be talking about it, right? Because you've got a certain amount of money and you're trying to build some product for people to give you some money before you fly off the end of the runway, right? You've got to take off the plane or you run out of money. Right? And so balancing engineering under this banner is really hard. Normally you work at a big company or enterprise. In consulting you would never even know, right? But because you're wasting somebody else's money. But when you're working in a big company even, you're in a product team, you're one of 500 teams or 500 people, who knows? You don't have the visibility to these bigger level issues. I believe you should. But in a smaller company, your salary stops here, right? When the plane gets to the end of the runway. And so my startup, this is my real chart. Don't photograph it. This is my real chart of when I'm running out of money for my startup. I got some funding from some people, and now we're trying to build products so that people will start to use the product and we can convert that or get some more money, right? And so I use startuprunway.io to tool, a few of us use it, and that's my death time, right? That's $0 left in the bank based on how I think I'm going to be spending my money. So that is an interesting way to code and to develop. And it's funny, when you do this, all your priorities, what you think about in a big company changes. I met a guy the other day, he said to me, "I'm only a functional coder." I'm like, "What do you mean you're a functional coder?" "I'm a coder that codes value for customers." He goes, "Well, yeah, maybe, but I only do it in functional programming languages." Like that kind, he works in a very big company. That kind of, what is that? I don't know what that is. All right, but that's what happens when we have a lot of money in a big company, right? You can afford to be a prima donna like that, right? Whereas everyone else, this needs to get shit done so you can get customers and don't fall off the runway. Here's how it roughly works. It's a bit of a balancing act, right? Really important for the CTO to understand this and to communicate this, okay? On one side of the equation is the cost to build the product that you said you're going to build and sell, right? Then when it's in production, you're going to be maintaining it, right? So you need another team to come in and kind of look after it. It may not be the same as the build team. And there's going to be, obviously, Amazon's costs and Azure and all the running costs you've got. And then hopefully, what you've built has enough value that someone's going to pay for it enough that this is denser than all of that, right? And obviously it's not, so you're going to have to work hard at this. And you need, what do you need? Oh, what do you need? You need the business to help you. But the business, they sit on the back of that seesaw, right? And so that's not going to fly. This is absolutely the equation that you've got to be working towards. And obviously, hopefully, you'd have enough of these people buying it that you could at least balance it out, right? But if you're building, and it's easy to do, you can build something today that you cannot afford to run. Because the value that it provides is, it could use amazing AI technology, right? Which is very expensive and crunches huge amounts, millions of dollars for the Amazon cost. And people pay, yeah, I'll pay 20 cents a month for that. Doesn't work. So how long would you go and spend the cost to build before you realize that you're never going to make a product out of this and you're going to die? And time to death was pretty close, right? As CTO, you've got insight into this stuff. And more to the point, you want it to be like that, right? I mean, there's no point breaking even on a product. You can't feed your kids when you're breaking even, right? So you need to completely outweigh how much you're going to sell this thing for. But one thing I haven't shown you on this chart is what? The cost to sell and the cost to run and the cost to maintain is actually proportional to the little green box. The more customers you have, the more you're going to, right? If any of this doesn't work out, time to death arrives, right? So everybody, as a CTO or as a technical leader, should be absolutely, completely clear about this spreadsheet of what we're doing. And when it comes time to scale this thing, you know that you could spend a lot of money. We'll just go horizontal, right? And we'll just keep adding more machines. That's expensive. How far can you scale? Not because it won't scale because you've got too many machines and your algorithms won't work, because you can't afford it, right? There's a point here. I believe most product companies die because they just don't get this balance right. So when you're building a product, right, this is the landscape of all the products. At the top there, that's the product you want to build. It's a great product. And this is, that's pretty good out of all the possible options. But if you're on the back corner there, what are you going to do? If you are walking, time to die. If you are climbing, it's because you usually start at a little X, and then we do what's called Agile, which means we look at the next little thing, and the next little thing, and the next little thing, and we work our way up until we get to the top of a mountain, and we go, okay, where are we? We could be at the back corner. In which case, it's a pivot or it's death. Because you could just wake up one day and you're on the wrong hill. CTO needs to have the foresight to stand back before we even start and go, okay, which hill are we climbing here? What are the possible hills? That's kind of the major differences, right, between the CTO and others. So great for the CTO to have it, but shouldn't also other people have it? Like, you can't, as one person in a team of 500 or 1,000 or 30,000 or even 10 or even 5, do all that. So everybody on the team needs to be good technically, good with their knowledge about the business you're trying to build, great execution, right? If you don't have great execution, you miss out on this little T, time, right? And if you don't have technical capability, you miss out on the Q, quality. And if you don't have any domain knowledge, so you build something you don't really know what you're building, then at the end of the day, it's going to have no U. It's going to have no utility. All right? And as we just saw, this has a complete overlay with the business context. In what kind of world, how much money have we got, how's this thing got to scale, how much have we got to sell it for, can we do it for cheap enough? Every engineer is making 100 decisions every day on every line of code for this equation, for the future of your business. And if they don't have this context, they're going to be doing it wrong. And you'll get to the point where it is time to die. So the role of the CTO is to educate, share, and bring everyone on this journey. Share context of the business all the time. Keep people's technical and domain expertise and execution. You've got to keep those. That's why I was working on Agile, so you can prove, you can prove your execution. That's why you want to visit customers, so you can have, domain knowledge. That's why you want to go to CTO summits, so you can have technical capability. If I sum up the whole CTO role, I think it is this weird statement. Get your company, the people, looking towards the medium view. And you're doing that through influence. A medium view outlook. You know, I think the executive and the bosses, they're looking too far out. And the developers, we're looking at Agile, we're looking at the next card on the wall, and we miss the forest for the cards. But there's a medium level view which everyone needs to be at. And I think that's the role of the CTO, is to guide the company for that medium view. Just enough planning, just enough everything, just to get it right. Thank you. Do I have time for questions?
Yeah, a few questions.
Questions? I was nice to the guy here, wasn't I? Yeah.
That's it.
Yes, sir.
That's great that we know what we're meant to be doing now.
Good. Go do it.
Everyone else in the business know that.
It doesn't matter. You're an executive. You've got a C in front of your name. When you're a developer, just get your job done. Just shut up and code, right? Do what you're told, all right? But when you are C-level, you are now responsible for the business. And there's no one saying to you, oh, you should take this little bit, but not that bit, or, you know, kind of get these, try to get engineering. No. If engineering screws up, so interesting, the VP of engineering getting it done, CTO influencing on architecture and strategy. If the VP of engineering screws up, whose fault is it? CTO, right? That's the RACI model, responsible, accountable, committed, blah, blah, blah. The VP of engineering is responsible for delivery, and the CTO is accountable. You are, as CTO, accountable for all the delivery. You're accountable for every security breach. No, it was that, I promise, it wasn't me, I'm CTO, that developer. You should see his code. That's your fault, right? That is your fault. So that's why you've got to be looking at how we're educating people broadly in security to make sure that, you know, they're not putting security holes in so you don't lose your job.
Do you have any thoughts on how the solution works when your company doesn't have anyone that they can view that sort of power in, so you don't have C-levels or you have a flat organization?
Then you show initiative. All right? No one wants to hear in a business, oh, that wasn't my job, and I assume somebody else will be doing that, right? Every single thing you see that's going on in the business, especially in a very, very small one, you own. And you own it until somebody else wants it, right? Or something else happens. But whatever you see, take ownership of, especially in a startup, right? They talk about the startup world being hard to work in and, you know, lots of pressure. Yeah, damn, you bet, right? Because you own absolutely everything. And those things, oh, we'll let that one go, that's all fine. No, that's on your plate. So step up. Even in a big business, if you want to be a CTO, even a developer, whatever you are, step up. Everyone loves somebody below them in the organization to take ownership on something. That's the best thing you can ever do in an organization. Just step up, take it on, and say, hey, I saw this issue. I think this is a solution. Here's my plan to deal with it. And talking to executives is interesting. Has anyone here spoken to big, scary executives? They look like this. Couple of rules when talking to an executive. The first rule is never, ever talk tech. Right? They just don't want to hear it. They just don't know it. They glaze over. Useless. You're talking about the business and the implications of what you're building. And you talk about the spreadsheet with the balancing act on it. You know, beautiful. The other thing you don't want to do is say stupid things. Because executives have executive expression fixation. Have you heard of that? No. It's a real thing, I promise. It's a real thing. It's in Wikipedia. And
Did you just add that this morning?
what it is you say something stupid, they'll just pick you up on that, and then they'll hammer you on that, and nothing else you ever say matters. So just be a bit more measured. Don't say, oh, mate, we've got a fucking million bugs in the system. Right? That's just they will focus on that, and then it'll be all over. And the other thing for the executive is, what do they love? When speaking to what's porn to an executive? Who knows? Executive porn is not money. You think it would be? It's not, unless you've got a bad executive. It's not power. It's a plan. When you present a plan to an executive, oh my God, they freaking love it. They just go all jelly-like, right? It says to them, I don't know the shit you're talking about. It's tech crap. I don't know. But it looks like you can reason about it in logical order, and they can reason about everything. Executives reason about everything in logical order that's logical to them, and that's fine. So if you can put something together in a plan, they will love you, and you'll have a job for many moons. Thank you all very much.